There is something truly special about those classic BMWs from the 80s and 90s. Hop behind the wheel of an E30 or E36, and you'd swear you're piloting a 500 horsepower monster. But here's the kicker, most of these cars were pushing out way less than half that. How did BMW manage to create this illusion of immense power? It's all about the driving experience. These older BMWs had a perfect storm of engineering choices that made them feel absolutely alive. First off, their weight, or rather, the lack of it. These cars were significantly lighter than modern vehicles. We're talking 2,600 to 3,200 pounds for most models. That's a featherweight by today's standards. The E33 25i, for instance, tipped the scales at just around 2,800 pounds. Compare that to a modern 3 Series that easily exceeds 3,500 pounds, and you start to see why these older models felt so nimble. Now, pair that lightweight chassis with BMW's legendary inline-six engines. These straight sixes were absolute jewels, torque monsters that delivered a smooth, linear power band that felt like it could pull forever. Take the M50 engine found in the early E36 325i. It might have only been pushing about 189 horsepower, but it delivered its power with such smoothness and eagerness that it felt like much more. The throttle response was incredibly direct, no drive-by-wire, just a pure mechanical connection between your right foot and the engine. You thought about accelerating, and the car responded instantly. But the secret sauce? It's in the gearing. BMW wasn't shy about using shorter gear ratios in these cars. This meant that you were always in the engine's sweet spot, ready to surge forward at a moment's notice. Every gear change felt like unleashing a new wave of power. The close ratio gearbox in something like an E30 M3 meant that you were constantly in the meat of the power band, giving you that sensation of relentless acceleration. Let's not forget the suspension setup. The McPherson struts up front and the semi-trailing arm rear suspension on many models gave these cars an incredible balance. You could feel every nuance of the road, allowing you to carry speed through corners with confidence. This connectedness made you feel like you were going much faster than you actually were. The E36, for example, introduced a multi-link rear suspension that further improved handling dynamics, giving the car an almost telepathic response to steering inputs. And here's a bit of engineering genius, BMW's use of a limited slip differential in many models. This little beauty ensured that power was always being put down efficiently, especially when cornering. It gave these cars a lively, tail-happy character that was addictive to experienced drivers. The way these differentials worked in conjunction with the rear-wheel drive layout meant that you could steer these cars with the throttle, a characteristic that made them feel incredibly powerful and agile. Moreover, the brakes. BMW equipped these cars with oversized rotors and strong calipers for the time. This meant that you could carry more speed into corners, knowing you had the stopping power to rein things in if needed. The confidence this inspired allowed drivers to push harder, further enhancing the sensation of speed and power. Another factor that contributed to the 500 horsepower feel was the seating position. BMW nailed the driver-oriented cockpit design in these cars. You sat low, with the steering wheel close to your chest, and all controls within easy reach. This driving position made you feel like you were wearing the car rather than sitting in it, amplifying every sensation of speed and cornering force. The steering in these classic BMWs deserves a special mention. Before the days of electric power steering, BMW used hydraulic systems that provided incredible feedback. You could feel every pebble on the road through the steering wheel. This level of communication between the car and driver meant you could place the vehicle with millimeter precision, allowing you to carry more speed through corners than you'd think possible. Lastly, there's the intangible factor, the lack of electronic nannies. No traction control, no stability control, just you and the machine. This raw, unfiltered experience meant that every input you made had a direct, sometimes dramatic effect on the car's behavior. It kept you engaged, alert, and often grinning from ear to ear. You weren't just driving, you were actively piloting the vehicle at all times. It's also worth mentioning the sound these cars made. BMW's inline-sixes, especially when paired with a performance exhaust, produced a symphony that made you feel like you were going faster than you were. The growl at low RPMs that built to a spine-tingling wail as you approached redline, it was intoxicating and further enhanced the sensation of speed and power. So while these classic BMWs might not have had 500 horses under the hood, the combination of lightweight design, responsive engines, smart gearing, and pure, analog driving dynamics created a sensation of speed and power that many modern cars, despite their superior stats, struggle to match. It's not just about the numbers, it's about how the car makes you feel. And those old-school BMWs? They felt like nothing else on the road. They demanded respect, skill, and attention from the driver, but rewarded you with an unparalleled driving experience. It's why so many enthusiasts still seek out these models today, chasing that pure, unadulterated connection between man and machine that made you feel like you were piloting a car with far more power than the spec sheet suggested. In the end, it's this holistic approach to the driving experience that made these 80s and 90s BMWs feel like they had 500 horsepower, even if the actual numbers were far more modest.